Your computer is being held hostage, and most people have no idea it already happened. Right now, as you're watching this, hundreds of millions of Windows machines are sitting exposed. No patches, no protection, just waiting. And Microsoft, they want you to pay to escape, but I'm going to show you the exit door they don't want you to find. Here's what nobody is telling you about 2026. Linux, the operating system that powers 96% of the world's servers, runs every Android phone you've ever touched, and runs the fastest supercomputers on the planet, is now genuinely easier to use than Windows. I'm going to say that again because it sounds impossible. Linux is easier than Windows. Now before you click away, I know what you're thinking. Linux is for programmers. Linux is complicated. I tried Linux 10 years ago and it broke everything. And you know what? You were right. Back then. But I'm going to show you something today that is going to completely rewire how you think about this. There's a checklist, a migration checklist that I've spent 3 months building, testing, and breaking. So you don't have to. Stick with me until the end because step 7 on this list has saved people weeks of pain, and most tutorials online get it completely wrong. But first, let's talk about why this moment right now in 2026 is unlike any previous moment in computing history. Let me show you exactly how we got here. October 14th, 2025. Microsoft ended support for Windows 10. That sounds like a boring corporate announcement, right? It isn't. What it actually means is this. If you're still running Windows 10, and over 60% of Windows users were as of mid-2025, you're now running an operating system that is never getting another security patch, ever. Every vulnerability discovered from that day forward stays open, stays exploitable. Your antivirus helps, but not enough. Now, Microsoft's solution is Windows 11, and Windows 11 has a problem, a hardware problem. To run it, your PC needs something called a TPM 2.0 chip. Hundreds of millions of machines, perfectly functional machines, don't have one, which means Microsoft has effectively told those users, your computer is obsolete. Buy a new one. But here's what Microsoft isn't advertising. That same machine that can't run Windows 11, it runs Linux beautifully, faster than it ever ran Windows, with better battery life, with no forced updates, no telemetry harvesting your browsing habits, no ads in the start menu, no subscriptions for basic features. And the Linux of 2026 is not, and I cannot stress this enough, it is not the Linux of 2014. I'm talking about distributions. We'll call them distros from now on, like Ubuntu 24, Fedora 41, Linux Mint 22, and Pop! OS. These are operating systems that you can install from a USB drive in under 20 minutes, that come with a full Office suite pre-installed, that auto-detect your hardware, that work with your Wi-Fi out of the box, and that look, honestly, better than Windows does. So let's ask the real question. Why hasn't everyone already switched? The answer is partly habit, partly fear, but mostly, nobody gave them a proper checklist until now. Let me give you the numbers that Microsoft doesn't put in their press releases. As of early 2026, security researchers are already cataloging what they call Windows 10 legacy vulnerabilities, exploits being actively sold on dark web forums, specifically targeting machines they know will never be patched. There's a term for this. It's called end-of-life exploitation. And it happened to Windows XP. It happened to Windows 7. It is happening right now to Windows 10. But wait, the situation gets more specific. Think about what you actually do on your computer. Online banking, tax returns, saved passwords, work documents, emails. Every single one of those sits on a machine that security experts are publicly calling a target. Now, and this is where it gets interesting, I'm not here to scare you into a panic, because here's the thing about fear. It makes people freeze, and frozen people don't do anything. What I want to give you is something different. I want to give you leverage, because the same week Microsoft ended Windows 10 support, something else happened that almost nobody reported. Linux Mint, consistently ranked as the easiest Linux distro for Windows users, released version 22, and the reviews were remarkable. Tech journalists who had covered Linux for 15 years were calling it the most Windows-like Linux experience ever built. One writer said, and I remember this exactly, he said, "I forgot I wasn't on Windows." That is not a small statement, that is a tectonic shift. So let's talk about what actually stands between you and a complete successful migration. Because it's not what you think. The technical parts are actually the easy parts. The part most people fail at is what I call the invisible checklist. The stuff you need to do before you ever touch a USB drive. Stop for a second and picture your typical week on your computer. You open Chrome or Edge, you check email. Maybe you use Microsoft Office, Word, Excel, maybe PowerPoint. You watch YouTube. You've got some photos somewhere on the machine, maybe some work files, maybe a VPN for the office, a printer, a scanner, an external drive that's half organized. Now, here's what I need you to hear clearly. Every single one of those things works on Linux. Chrome runs on Linux. Firefox runs on Linux. LibreOffice, which opens every Word and Excel file without breaking the formatting, is free and pre-installed on most distros. Your photos, your documents, your music, they all transfer over. Your external drives plug in and just work. Your printer probably auto-installs. Your VPN almost certainly has a Linux client. The exceptions are real, and I'll tell you exactly what they are. But they are exceptions, not the rule. And knowing them in advance is exactly what separates a smooth migration from a frustrated one. The number one thing people lose sleep over is gaming. So let me address that right now, directly. If you game on your PC, Steam on Linux, powered by something called Proton, now runs over 80% of the Steam catalog. Games like Cyberpunk 2077, Elden Ring, Counter-Strike 2, running natively on Linux. The remaining 20% is mostly anti-cheat software that's catching up. If you play one of those games, I'll show you exactly how to check before you migrate. The other big one, Adobe software, Photoshop, Premiere, Illustrator. These don't run natively on Linux. There are incredible alternatives. GIMP, Darktable, DaVinci Resolve, which is free and actually better than Premiere for video. But if your livelihood depends on Adobe's exact tools, I'll give you options that might surprise you. Everything else, it just works, and the checklist handles all of it. Let me explain Linux in 1 minute, in a way that actually makes sense. Linux is not one operating system, it's a family. Think of it like cars. All cars have engines, wheels, and a steering wheel. But a Toyota and a Ferrari are completely different experiences. Linux distros are like that. Same engine underneath, called the Linux kernel, but completely different on the surface. For 2026, there are 3 distros I recommend for Windows migrants, and only 3. Here's how to pick yours in 30 seconds. Linux Mint. This is your pick if you want something that feels exactly like Windows 7 in terms of layout. Taskbar at the bottom, start menu on the left, everything where you expect it. It's the gentlest transition. It just runs. It never breaks. It's boring in the best possible way. Ubuntu. This is your pick if you want the most supported, most documented distro in existence. If something goes wrong, someone on the internet has already solved it. The interface is slightly different, more like a Mac, but you adapt in a day. Fedora. This is your pick if you want the absolute newest software, updated constantly, and you're comfortable being slightly on the edge. It's what developers tend to choose. It's excellent, but it's the least beginner tolerant of the 3. My recommendation for the average Windows user migrating in 2026, Linux Mint 22. Start there. You can always explore others later. The goal right now is a clean, successful migration, not finding the perfect distro forever. Now, the checklist. Before we get to the actual migration steps, I need to talk about the mistakes. Because here's the thing about Linux migration tutorials on YouTube. Most of them are made by people who already know Linux. They skip the parts that feel obvious to them, but those skipped parts are exactly where beginners get destroyed. Mistake number 1, not backing up properly. I don't mean copying your documents folder to an external drive. I mean a full bootable system image backup. Because the single most common migration disaster isn't Linux deleting your files during installation. It's the installer touching the wrong partition because the user clicked through one screen too fast. A complete system image means that even if this happens, you're recovered in an hour, not a week. Mistake number 2, not checking hardware compatibility first. Most modern hardware works with Linux, but most is not all. Some Wi-Fi cards, particularly certain Broadcom chips, have historically been problematic. Some very new GPUs might need drivers installed manually. The fix is simple. Boot Linux from a USB drive as a live session before you install anything. If Wi-Fi works in the live session, it'll work after installation. If it doesn't, you've discovered a problem safely, on your own terms. Mistake number 3, dual boot confusion. Dual booting, having Windows and Linux on the same machine, sounds appealing as a safety net. And it can be. But most guides don't tell you that dual boot can get messy fast. Windows updates have been known to overwrite the Linux bootloader. BIOS settings sometimes forget which OS to boot. If you're going dual boot, there's a specific partition setup I'll show you that prevents most of these issues. If you want the cleanest experience, honestly, install Linux on a separate drive entirely. Even a cheap USB 3.0 drive works. Mistake number 4, not knowing which apps you actually use. This sounds obvious. It isn't. Sit down right now and write a list, a real physical list of every application you open in a normal week. Then check each one against a Linux compatibility list. Because discovering your critical work application has no Linux equivalent on day 3 of your migration is a crisis. Discovering it on day 0 is just information. Mistake number 5, the password manager trap. If your passwords live only in Chrome or Edge, they're attached to a Google or Microsoft account and migrate fine. But if they're in a desktop password manager, particularly older ones, export them before you start. This is the kind of thing nobody thinks about until they've locked themselves out of something important. Okay, you now know more about Linux migration risks than 90% of people who've attempted it. And here's what that knowledge does. It transforms something scary into something manageable. The people who fail at Linux migration aren't technically incompetent. They're underprepared. They dive in without a plan. They hit an unexpected problem at step 4. And they conclude that Linux isn't ready, but Linux was ready. They just didn't have the map. You now have the map. And I want you to understand something genuinely important here. When you're done with this migration, when you're running Linux and looking at your old Windows machine from the outside, the feeling is strange, liberating, but strange, because you realize that for years you were paying in money, in privacy, in performance, and forced updates for something that was getting worse over time. And the alternative was sitting there the whole time, free, open, getting better every single year. Linux isn't a sacrifice, it's an upgrade. You just need to execute the transition cleanly. Here's exactly how to do that. Here is the complete checklist. Follow this exact order. Don't skip steps. The order is not arbitrary. Each step protects the ones after it. 1. Write your app inventory. Open every piece of software you use in a typical week. Write it down. Then go to protondb.com for games and AppDB, or the distro's own app store equivalent for productivity apps. Mark each one. Native, works via compatibility layer, or needs an alternative. Be honest with yourself about which needs an alternative. Items are actually blockers. 2. Create a full system image backup. Use Macrium Reflect free, it's still available for Windows users, and create a bootable rescue media alongside your backup image. Store the image on an external drive that you will keep disconnected from your machine during the migration. This is your insurance policy. 3. Export your browser data. Bookmarks, passwords, extensions list. If you use Chrome, sign into your Google account and sync everything. Same for Firefox. If you use Edge, export bookmarks as an HTML file. This is importable into every Linux browser. 4. Document your network settings. Write down your Wi-Fi network name and password. If you use a VPN, download the Linux client or configuration files now. Note any static IP settings if applicable. 5. Check your hardware. Download the Linux Mint ISO. Use a tool called Rufus to write it to a USB drive. 8 GB minimum. Boot from the USB. Do not install yet. Just use the live session for 30 minutes. Does Wi-Fi connect? Does the screen resolution look right? Does audio work? Does your touchpad work? If yes to all, you're clear to proceed. If anything fails, note exactly what fails, and search device name Linux compatibility before going further. 6. Choose your installation type. If you have a secondary drive, even an old SSD pulled from another machine, install Linux there. This is the cleanest option. If you're going single drive, use the Install Alongside Windows option, which creates a dual boot. Set at least 50 GB for Linux. More if you plan to install games. During the partition step, double-check the target drive 3 times before clicking Install. 7. Enable disk encryption. During installation, Linux Mint will offer to encrypt your home folder or the full disk. For most users, full disk encryption via LUKS is the right choice. Yes, it requires a password at boot. Yes, it's worth it. If your laptop is ever stolen, your data is unreadable. This is a setting most Windows users never had, now offered to you for free during installation with 2 clicks. 8. Install the system updates immediately. When Linux Mint boots for the first time, it will show you the update manager. Run it completely before you do anything else. This is important. Then reboot. This ensures your driver stack is current before you start installing applications. 9. Install your essential applications. Linux Mint comes with LibreOffice, a media player, and a browser. From the software manager, which is like an app store, but everything is free, install your browser of choice, a PDF reader if you need one, VLC for any media format, and your communication apps. Zoom, Slack, Discord, and Microsoft Teams all have official Linux versions. Download them directly from the vendor websites for the latest versions. 10. Handle Microsoft Office files. LibreOffice opens .documents, .xlsx, and .pptex files. For 95% of users, this is completely adequate. For heavy Excel users with complex macros, and I mean genuinely complex, there are 2 additional options. OnlyOffice, which has near-perfect Office compatibility, and running Microsoft Office online via the browser, which is free and works in any browser. If you need full desktop Office, there's one more option. Run Windows in a virtual machine inside Linux. I'll link a guide for that in the description. 11. Set up your printer. Open the Printers tool in System Settings. Most modern printers auto-detect. If yours doesn't, search for your printer model plus Linux. Cups, the printing system built into Linux, supports thousands of printers. HP has an official tool called HPLP that covers almost their entire lineup. Canon and Epson both have Linux driver packages on their websites. 12. Configure gaming, if applicable. Install Steam. In Steam's settings, go to Steam Play, enable it for all titles, and select the latest Proton version. Restart Steam. Your Windows games will now show in your library. Check each title at protondb.com for specific tweaks. For games using anti-cheat software, check the developer's official Linux support statement. Many have added it in the past 2 years. 13. Snapshot your clean installation. This is something almost nobody tells you to do. Once your system is set up exactly how you want it, all apps installed, settings configured, everything working, create a system snapshot using Linux Mint's built-in Timeshift tool. This gives you a restore point. If you ever break something experimenting with the system, you can roll back to this known good state in minutes. This single habit removes almost all risk from future Linux use. 14. Learn the package manager. In Linux, software updates happen centrally. One command, or one click in the update manager, updates every application on your system simultaneously. No more Adobe Updater. No more Java update pop-ups. No more individual application auto-updaters running in the background, eating your RAM. This is one of the genuinely life-improving aspects of Linux that you won't fully appreciate until you experience it. 15. Know your help resources. Bookmark these 3. The Linux Mint forums at forums.linuxmint.com, the r.linuxmint subreddit, and the Ask Ubuntu forum, which covers many cross-distro questions. These communities are large, active, and, this might surprise you, genuinely kind to beginners. The Linux community gets a reputation for being elitist. The beginner-focused corners of it are the opposite. Save these links now. Let me tell you something I genuinely believe. The biggest lie in tech is that you need their permission to use your own computer. Microsoft didn't end Windows 10 support because your hardware stopped working. They ended it to create pressure, to push you toward a new machine, a new license, a new subscription, to keep you inside a system that increasingly treats you as the product, not the customer. Linux exists outside that system. It was built outside that system, by people who believed that software should serve the person running it, not the other way around. The checklist I've just walked you through isn't complicated, it's methodical. And methodical is something every one of you can be. You back up your data, you test your hardware, you install the system, you set up your tools, you take a snapshot, and here's the part that surprises people, you forget that it's different. Because after about 2 weeks, it isn't different anymore. It's just your computer, doing what you tell it, when you tell it, for free. Pin this video, come back to it when you're ready. And when you do the migration, and it works, come back and tell me in the comments. Because that comment thread, it's going to be long. The only question left is whether you're still going to let a corporation decide what your computer is allowed to do, or whether, starting today, that decision is finally yours.